Hi, it's Steve Hargadon. It is the 23rd of October, 2013. This is yet another Connected Cafe, casual opportunity to meet movers and shakers. So there's a lot going on with Connected Educator Month, especially today. There has just been a ton going on. Be sure to go to connectededucator.org. There is the Ed Connector cool program that Mark Sylvester has built. There are the book clubs. There is a badge. You can actually get a badge for being here tonight. It'll be our last slide. They require that I hold it till the end so that you have to attend. But anyway, it's turned out I've never been a big badge fan. And Jim, I'm seeing a connection here that I didn't see before, which is I'm not a huge fan of sort of this additional infrastructure, thousands of badges that people have to keep track of. But it turns out to be a very good way for teachers to manifest that they participated and to get credit with their districts. And so I'm whistling a little bit of a different tune.
Well, and this is what we're starting to explore with the HP Catalyst Academy, so I can tell you more about that later as we move along here.
Let's do it. Let's make that one of our topics for tonight, because I am experiencing a personal change of opinion here. Put a note in my notes. Okay, so for the massive crowd that's here, Rhonda, Gordon, Julie, and Kendra. Hey, Julie makes us international because she's in Australia. Julie, lovely to have you here. If you don't know how this works, there's a set of icons to the left of the map. You double click on the star and then you click on the map. Today in North Carolina, where I am this year as part of watching this Sugata Mitra self-organized learning environment project take place. It's the coldest it's ever been on this day in history. So it's been a really weird weather year in North Carolina, and it continues to be weird. And Julie is here. Kendra, I don't know where you are. Rhonda, Gordon, Florida, that's you. That's Jim in California.
Must be warm where Julie is. It's she got a smiley face out of it. So
yeah.
I hope you aren't burning up in the wildfires there, Julie.
Well, I actually am really delighted to have both of you here tonight. You're both, to some degree, I would say, have become friends. Jim, I've only met you in person a couple of times, but we are sort of close comrades in arms after the STEMX conference. And Yovel and I have had some of the deepest conversations around education that I've had in a long while. So it is fun to have both of you here. So the way that this works, and Yovel, I'm seeing what would be an indicator that might be a slowdown. So if at some point in time you're having trouble with audio, just put a note in the chat and let us know. The way this works is that we'll ask each of you to give kind of a 5-minute overview of your work. Don't rush through this. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds, but kind of your background, what interests have brought you to where you are, kind of the story of your life and career, enough that people will have a pretty good sense of, kind of where we can go from there. We will talk about your passions a little bit later, so you don't have to not mention them, but do know we're going to give you plenty of time to kind of drill down on things that you're really interested in right now that are captivating you. So Jim, can we start with you on the bio?
Sure, happy to start. I'll give you the brief version here, and we can drill down more if you'd like. I'm at my core a technologist and an educator, but the path there has been really a lot of fun. I started my original career as a technologist, as an engineer, mechanical engineer, doing R&D, product development, manufacturing engineering. And typical of working at HP, they encourage us to be out in the community doing good things. And in my case, I was attracted to working with science teachers in the community. got real involved in HP's early science education outreach programs and HP's science education philanthropy that was going on. And it had a huge impact on me. In fact, I was so inspired by these amazing educators I was meeting, I ended up going back to Stanford, but this time in the School of Education. And I was particularly curious, what is this magic called learning, and how do you create a powerful learning experience for students? And at the Stanford School of Ed, they have a program called Learning Design and Technology. So it was a perfect place to explore what does the research say, and how do you design a learning experience that's based on that research, and then what role does technology play in all of that. And one of the main things I learned, of course, is that the learning comes first and the technology comes third. And if you flip it around, you get the wrong answer. And when I came back to HP in corporate philanthropy, as it was called at the time, I started working on ed tech projects, exploring this intersection of teaching, learning, and technology. And it's been really exciting to see what happens when you do it right. And now here I am, 10 years later, we've been involved in projects, maybe 1,200 projects in over 41 countries, and have learned some really interesting things about what's required to really make this happen. And the number one thing that moves the needle on student achievement is there's these two variables: teaching, great teaching, and great technology, or I should say the right technology. So when you combine great teaching with the right technology and you weave them together with the purpose of creating an experience that students couldn't have had before, then you're in that sweet spot where you can create a powerful learning experience that moves the needle on student achievement. And that's what I get excited about. The possibilities continue to evolve, and we can talk about them more in detail, Steve, if you'd like, but I'm very excited and optimistic that we can begin solving some of the more intractable problems around access and quality if we do this right.
Okay, Jim, you know I'm not given to hyperbole, but that was maybe the most interesting 3 minutes I've heard in a long time. Wow. And I've known you, right? I mean, that was really interesting. Okay, I want to drill down on a couple of things, and then we'll move to Yovel. So, Jim, I grew up in Palo Alto. I watched HP. The HP way was kind of a touchstone for many of us who grew up in that environment. And to what degree has HP retained that influence of being the company that kind of had this guiding light of how you treat employees and how you create products? And to what degree has our economy or market as a whole sort of lost that? I'm not asking you to say anything about HP necessarily, but it feels like, at some point we no longer held out HP as the ideal. Not because of HP, but because I think our sense of business success and technology changed.
Well, at its core, HP has a long-standing commitment in working with the community and working to improve education, and that's been the case and is still the case. We may call it different things, moving from corporate philanthropy to social innovation and such, but at its core, what we do today and what we've always wanted to do is have a positive social impact while we're having a positive business impact, because Bill and Day's objective at the beginning was to create value, create a lasting company based on value. And they recognized from the beginning that giving back to the community was just a natural thing to do. And now that we're an international company, the community is everywhere we are, and so there's new opportunities to do that. So what we've been doing, I think, over time is trying to get better at how we do that, so that we can take our resources, our people, and and our what we know, and do the best job of that as we can. Let's be honest, a company can't solve the big intractable problems of the universe, but on the other hand, we can be part of the solution. And so it continues to be that way, and I think that part of the HP way thrives.
I didn't mean in any way to imply that that wasn't the case at HP. I just said the question poorly, because what I meant was it felt like the world kind of changed, right? I mean, I think that HP way was something that many of us kind of revered, and then we watched the world sort of move away from that sort of social contract, move away from that sense of how you treat your employees. It doesn't feel like it's the same world it was, say in 1980. Again, I didn't mean in any way that HP had veered from that. I meant more that that we had changed as a society.
Well, certainly the Valley's changed a lot, from the days of orchards to the days of Silicon Valley to the kinds of, we remain in a region that is central to innovation, and it's got this innovation ecosystem that's actually matured, so that you see not only companies like HP and Intel and whatnot thriving, but you have also startups thriving. And this interesting infrastructure for innovation and entrepreneurship has gotten even more sophisticated, I think, in Silicon Valley. But back to things like HP Way, caring about your people is still good business.
Yeah, again, it was my touchstone set of stories. Okay, so after you sort of thrilled us with those 3 minutes, my first thought was, have you ever been tempted to write a book?
Many times, yeah. If I could, work down my 1,200 unread email messages in my inbox, I might feel like I have time to do that. But in the meantime, I blog, because I can do that in one sitting and feel good about myself. But writing a book would be a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm sitting on a gold mine of really interesting information, anecdotes, and data about this intersection of teaching, learning, and technology that has to be shared. But I'll have to tell you, Steve, writing a book takes so long, it almost seems like the wrong path to go on. I'd rather spend more time blogging and interacting in the social media sphere in real time, because the challenges we face in something like STEM education are so urgent that I don't think they can wait for yet another book. I think we have to act on what we know now, and the trick is get our collective wisdom together now. So, yeah, I'd like to write a book, but right now there's a sense of urgency that drives me forward, that focuses me on things like blogging and tweeting. Okay,
when you write that book, I'll be the first in line. Okay, one other thing you said.
I'm open for titles, title recommendations. Send them.
Okay, you said something really interesting to me. You said great teaching and the right technology, and then you weave them together. A theme that has come out several times in the cafe has been this sense that right now the technology actually trumps the teaching in terms of impact, that the technology is so significant. I'd love to hear your seasoned perspective on this, because I can't tell if that's actually true. I mean, is this sort of the equivalent of the printing press, and we're going to look back and say, the impact of the technology was so enormous that it was bigger than the teaching? Or are we falling into a trap when we focus so much on the technology?
Well, I think people have for decades wanted the technology to scale up and replace things that we feel like might be needing improvement or needing lower cost models and things. So everyone keeps wanting the magic technology that will allow learners to learn everything they need to know on their own without intervention of a teacher. And the Hole in the Wall project shows to some degree you can do some of that. And just the fact that you have things like YouTube out there, and you can go learn just about anything you think from watching the videos. Now here's the flip side of that, though. The distribution of information is not good teaching on its own. And in fact, I would maintain that when you read a website and watch a video, you're only partly smart. And the danger is you might think you're actually smart. And from researchers like Jim Greeno to all sorts of folks, it's very clear that learning is socially situated. And Vygotsky and his zone of proximal development, the idea of scaffolding. It's still true that a novice can't get from here to here on their own. A novice doesn't even know what they're watching when they watch a video. An expert will watch a video in a very different way than a novice. Okay, so to get from here to here, you need some scaffolding support. Now, does that always need to come in the form of a teacher as we've known it? Well, maybe there's some wiggle room there, but it does need to come in the form of somebody that can help you. And at least that's my view right now, is that that somebody, it can be complemented by all sorts of great technologies that didn't exist before, but I don't think we'll be satisfied with me and my computer alone learning. You'll only get partly there, and in fact, you may fool yourself in thinking you're all the way there.
My gosh, Jim, this is like the drops of golden dew from heaven. It's so funny. It's like, you and I have actually never really had this drill down conversation, and now I'm wondering why. Right? Okay, so what sort of final set of questions before we move to Yovel? So a lot of the kind of the new learning technologies are coming out of the AI departments. This is something that Audrey Waters kind of has been talking about a lot, and she's working on a book called The Learning Machines. And this sense that we can sort of build a we can create an algorithm which is going to take care of everything, and we can have machines that would grade papers. And what I'm hearing you say is this sort of great human theme through the millennia, right, of mentoring and support and help and the human relationship side. When you look at some of these new technologies like MOOCs or the artificial intelligence kind of grading or systems, are there people other than Vygotsky that you go back to kind of as sort of your guiding set of ideas that you refer to that sort of really helped you sort of think about this?
Well, let me just say that the kinds of technologies I get the most excited about are the ones that amplify what people are good at, and they replace what is drudgery for people. Now, some of those people are teachers, so get rid of the drudgery of teachers and amplify what teachers are really good at. Insightful intervention and support for novices that are trying to learn something new, and to the extent that a MOOC, Coursera's done some very clever things with automating feedback. To the extent, though, you can't automate the feedback. I don't think the goal needs to always be to automate everything. I think the goal needs to be to amplify human capacity. And anyway, so for example, let me give you an example of the power of graphical polling. Okay, so you know what multiple choice polling is like. Everyone has a voting device. It could be their phone or a clicker or something, and you ask a question, and multiple choice. Which of these is which drawing best represents a parabola, A, B, C, or D? And people vote. Okay, you'll get one kind of answer from that kind of interaction. But what if you could ask a question whose answer requires a drawing? So instead you ask, draw me a parabola. Now with that open-ended question, you get all sorts of insights about what your students don't know. And even without a lot of automation, you can quickly scan through all the drawings and find the really interesting ones to talk about. You get the power of anonymity in your classroom because people didn't sign their drawings necessarily, so everyone's free to express what they don't know. And that's the heart of formative assessment that really drives student learning and better teaching, is knowing what your students don't know right now before the bell rings so you can help them. So through something as simple as graphical polling, it does that. And there's great research now that shows how this has moved in classroom discussions, how it's moved student achievement, and it's so simple you almost forget. And yeah, you could maybe add some automation to analyze the drawings and stuff, but you almost don't need to. And so I say automate the drudgery and amplify the human beings, and then we'll get the right mix.
So interesting, Jim. So I'm going to just ask you about a couple of names and see how you respond. Are you a Seymour Papert fan?
Oh, I love reading about. He was very inspiring to me early on. I think partly because he was so student-centric. in what he was describing. And the early programming language that he was introducing students to, you could argue about whether that was the best tool, but it was the first time I'd seen adults letting students loose on such a thing. And that was what was exciting about Seymour Papert to me. It's happening again now with Scratch and other kinds of programming languages that, oh my gosh, fourth graders can do. Sure, let's let kids design programmable clothing with Scratch and an Arduino board. You really could do this in fourth or fifth grade. And I think in many ways it's Seymour Papert revisited.
Are you a Makerspace fan?
I got to say, I was originally kind of confused by it all. It just seemed so ad hoc and grassroots, and I didn't know how it fit into the learning landscape and the formal education reform that I was trying to, enact and be involved in. And I have to say, now I get it. And with the onslaught, or not onslaught, the next generation science standards and engineering practices are on the horizon, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also recognizing that people will be very challenged to know what to do with all that. And making is in many ways the beginning of engineering design, and it's a great entree, and it's student-centric. And even personally, I remember, what inspired me to be an engineer in the first place? Well, it was going off into the garage with my dad, and we'd be scribbling sketches and talking about ideas, and we'd be building stuff. And kids just don't build stuff enough anymore, tinkering and such. So I get it now, and yeah, I'm a big fan now.
Wow, so fun. Okay, let's switch to Yovel for a bit here. Tom DeBoer is likely to come in about 7 minutes and do an update for tomorrow for Connected Educator. But between now and then, Yovel, let's kind of do the same thing with you. Give us a little bit of an understanding of your background and what's brought you to where you are. And again, we'll do the passion bit after the break. But and don't want you to not say that, but more of a little bit of a historical. Oh, and Yovel, I actually turned your mic off, so you're going to have to turn it back on.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
So mine is going to be a little bit shorter than Jim. It was an amazing bio. Actually, I'm not an educator. I'm originally from Israel. I'm a technologist, and I've been in technology for about 15 years now. About 6 years ago, I felt the passion to use technology to impact society, or to actually use technology for the greater good, if you want. And very quickly I selected education as one of the prime markets that is ready for disruption. And I started a company called Namaya, where we created this online education platform. And after being active in this space for a few years, an idea that came to my head started writing itself as a book. To your point about a book, and I actually authored a book called No Child Held Back. And I guess the kind of the point of the book is that that I argue on a couple of levels, but the first level is that one of the key elements that we're challenged with in education is the fact that whether we call it the law or not, the vision of our education system is that of No Child Left Behind, or some sort of a factory model where we try to move kids through bodies of knowledge based on their age, where, I coined the term No Child Held Back, which really is a different type of vision that kind of flips our education system and the purpose of a lot of the things that we do on its head, whether it's the purpose of tests, the role of the teacher, etc. And I've been active in education for 6 years now, 2 of which were around this idea of No Child Held Back.
Okay, what was your own education like?
So I was actually a pretty good student in school. I was always at the top of my class. I was identified as a gifted student, but unfortunately my parents at the time didn't have the resources to support the thing that would support my development at the time. That led me to really be a self-learner, and that it was reflected in the way that I acquired my degree. I went to the Open University in Israel, which is kind of like, I guess the closest in the US would be Phoenix, where you really kind of do your learning in correspondence, where you get course material, course guidance, and you meet once every couple of weeks with a guide, and you basically learn on your own, which really fit my schedule and fit my learning style.
Is there an easy way to compare the education system in Israel with the education system in the United States?
I think they're not that different. I think they're very similar in the structure. We have, a similar concept of curriculum. There's a fairly similar structure of unions or teacher development. It's not that different. We have the same issues with urban schools and rural schools that have issues with getting great teachers. It's not that different. I think a lot of the problems that we face in the U.S. are similar to the ones that they're facing in Israel and other parts of the world.
I'm looking at the comments here. So you actually were self-motivated and able to do this self-directed study. What's your sense of the uniqueness of that? Is that something that most people are capable of doing, or is it reflective of a certain body of people and a certain personality type who can do that kind of independent work?
I'm not an expert. I'll give you just my opinion, and kind of what I argue in the book is that when the learner is engaged with the subject, when you actually care about what you're learning, when it comes from a question that you have, from something that is of a passion within you, I think that, learning on your own is a lot more likely to be effective. When you're being taught from above, or you don't have a lot of choice to what you learn or kind of the path you take, then it's a lot harder to do it on your own because you don't have the intrinsic, reasoning. So I think we all have some capabilities of learning, and I think we see it with the Khan Academy and some other, content marketplaces out there where, when there is an intrinsic, reason or desire, and then there's the right guide on the side, a lot of learning could happen on an individual basis. It doesn't have to be in a classroom with 30 kids with one instructor in front of the class.
I'm going to do, because I don't see Tom in the room. Oh, Tom is in the room. So one quick question before we get to Tom. So Jim, you loved Ramsey's keynote at STEMXCon, right? It was Ramsey that really excited you. Does Ramsey's model for building an activity at the beginning of the lesson that actually creates the interest and the engagement, does that match up, do you think, with what Yovel just said?
Well, what I liked about Ramsey said, what struck me about Ramsey's keynote was that he was the quintessential constructivist in action. And I think when you actually invite your students to be engaged in that way, it works very well. I don't know. What do you think, Yovel? I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back. So Tom DeBoer is here. Tom gets to give us the report for what's going on tomorrow. Tom, is it as busy a day as you thought it would be?
Well, I mean, since I had to spend all day writing newsletters, I didn't get to see anything. But the signs are that it was an incredibly busy day. I know the first event of the day, which was out in Iowa, Connected Leaders Transforming Iowa with Scott McLeod and a bunch of other folks. I heard reports that there were 40 or 50 people there for that, bright and early in the morning, even though our promotion was a little bit late. So, this was crazy. I mean, I kind of expected to come here tonight and find all your virtual selves dead because of the number of. It was a beautiful, I would say, a beautiful car wreck of a day with all, not just the number of events that were going on, but the organizations involved. It was just a spectacular lineup. You know, and tomorrow is, and there's still things going on tonight that are worth mentioning. After this event, you can catch either the second half of CP Chat's talk about the Connected Ed future, which they'll, among other things, they'll be handling some questions from the Department of Ed to the principals of America about what they think about the Connected Ed initiative and what issues they have with it. Or you can go over to the AFT Test Common Core series. Tonight is about something about text complexity in the Common Core. They've had lined up a great series of experts, and they've been getting a lot of traction. A lot of people registered for that event. I guess, you know, the one I'm sort of curious about is at 9 o'clock when the singer Rafi is appearing at KinderChat to talk about his new book. I'm kind of curious about the book itself because it's the title of the book is Reform Social Media Before Social Media Reforms Us. So I'm kind of curious about what he means by that. But for tomorrow, to just skip really quickly to that, let me just grab on my notes here if I can get them. So Edutopia, as some of you know, has been soliciting connected educators' stories all throughout the month, and tomorrow they're going to publish a collection of the best ones that they got. Taking IT Global and the Global Education Center have another interesting video conference event that students are invited to join, as well as classes and teachers on the Middle East. And then at 3 o'clock, a couple organizations make their debut for Connected Educator Month. Partnership for 21st Century Skills, aka P21, and Ed Leader 21 have a talk about the implementation challenges of 21st century education, 7 steps for schools and districts. Dreambox Learning is appearing for the first time at 3 o'clock. Jesse Woolley Wilson was one of our panelists in the opening, so it'll be interesting to see what she has to say. MacArthur's Maker Geek Outs continue at 4 o'clock this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. That's teen-led maker activities. It's a great way to sort of learn, get a sense of what kind of excitement and learning can be generated by maker activities in your classroom. Discovery has an event at 7 o'clock that I'm just curious about because of the title, which is When the Smartest Person in the Room Isn't in the Room with Hal Davidson. And that kind of title makes me intrigued. And also at 7, National Writing Project's radio show is on. The topic is going to be reading in a participatory culture. PLP, Powerful Learning Press, has an author chat with some of their authors, and their press is interesting because they have a lot of sort of non-traditional authors. They've had kids writing books and classroom teachers who've never written before, and that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, at 7:30, we have another great event here with Lucy Gray and Stephen Anderson. Stephen just before he heads over to the WISE conference in Qatar next week. So it's still another great, it's not as crazy as today, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it'll give everybody a chance to really either take things in or get a little bit of rest. And that's my update.
Thanks,
Steve.
Tom. Yeah, what an amazing day. Really appreciate your taking the time to do that. And we know you have lots going on, so we won't you if you don't stick around. If you do stick around, go ahead and turn your mic off, because
yeah, will do.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so let's shift gears here a little and give both Jim and Yovel a chance to kind of drill down on something that they're thinking about, or a project, or something that's sort of top of mind. Jim, you may have already touched on it. Feel free to elaborate. But is there something that you're really kind of playing around with now that you would want to share with us?
Sure. You know, one of the things that everyone seems to puzzle with when it comes to innovations in education is how do you scale up a great idea? And I'm glad to see lots of people wrestling with it, but it's not an easy thing. And always we come back to the notion that training more teachers is part of the solution. So this is what caused us to launch the HP Catalyst Academy in the first place, which was, if you look around the world, there just simply isn't enough what used to be called teacher professional development capacity everywhere in the world to handle the demand. This is true in STEM plus learning and teaching, and it's also in other disciplines. So, we turn to online tools to figure out how we can do this better. And so what the Catalyst Academy is doing is creating or exploring different models of online learning for teachers. So we don't call it professional development because it isn't what's classically experienced as professional development. These are 3 to 4 week, 6 to 12 hour mini courses, and they're offered by a variety of institutions on a variety of platforms, and we're just experimenting with what's possible. So, some might be considered MOOCs at some point, some might be considered mini MOOCs, some are like not MOOCs at all. And we're experimenting. But what glues them all together as well is digital badging. And so we're also investigating, well, what are some alternative forms of teacher professional recognition that can have some real professional currency for teachers? So can you collect a bunch of microcredits from experiences you're having from a variety of different places and get some professional currency out of it? So that's an interesting problem that we're exploring right now.
So let's talk about the badging, Jim, because when the Mozilla project first started and it really kind of started to gain some currency, I had this sort of terrible image of just this incredible complexity of all of these badges and trying to keep track of not just the person who gets the badges, but the person who then needs to evaluate the value of the badges, and sort of adding this additional layer that again was about some form of external validation rather than to measure what you do being what you're capable of doing. But like I said, I feel like I'm going through kind of a shift right now because of the degree to which these badges seem to be helping teachers get some credit with their districts. So can you jump from there at all? Is there are you actively working in such a way that you would want to tell us some things that you think really make sense here?
Well, it's interesting, very timely actually. I was in a meeting earlier today where Connie Yao from the MacArthur Foundation was talking about collaboration of organizations that are looking at badging for teachers. The idea, so this problem of what do you do with lots of badges, I mean, there's a lot of exciting potential in creating a platform where you could create a portfolio of these experiences and then show off your portfolio. And that's at its very nascent stages. In fact, all this badging stuff's at its very nascent stages. I think in its simplest form, I mean, for example, an HP Catalyst Academy class. If you've got 12 hours of some experience that you've done and some third party says, congratulations, and they can print out a certificate that says, congratulations, you spent 12 hours doing X. It's very primitive. It doesn't even say you've spent 12 hours and you've actually learned something. It just says you spent 12 hours. Well, in many school systems, that's good enough to go and get yourself some CEUs, some continuing education units. And outside the U.S., it has tremendous possibilities because there aren't all these formal structures for giving professional recognition with lots of rules. So it's more like the Wild West, out there, and you go to other countries and you can waive this certificate and it'll get you somewhere. So I think even now in its simplest form it has value, and the people are only now starting to figure out how to cash in on that value. As we move forward and you get lots of badges from lots of places, then the portfolio platform becomes really important. And yeah, the work we're doing is also Mozilla Open Badge compliant, and I think that's really important. And I think everyone doing this badging stuff better latch onto that standard. It's a wonderful idea because in the end you're going to be able to connect experiences and badges from different places, and they don't have to all be issued by one body, and that's the beauty of it. You can be issued by any number of bodies and they'll still show up in your any number of, maybe you have a portfolio here by one organization and all your badges show up, and you may have other portfolios with your badges showing up as well. So it's a wonderful wild woolly world right now as we step in there and figure it out.
So as the father of an Eagle Scout, but as someone who never even got close myself. But I watched my son go through this process, and there's an interesting thing that happens in scouting, right? Which is there are the Eagle Scouts for whom the badges are a reflection of what they have done that's really significant. And then there are the Eagle Scouts who have figured out sort of the minimal amount to do to get the required badges who become Scouts. So is there the same danger, right, in this kind of a badging idea, that it can become about the showcasing of the badges rather than the actual value? And is that just better than the alternative, which is not having any kind of a system?
So, like every technology that exists on the planet, there's a great way to use it and there's a bad way to use it. And I think badges will fall into that just as well. People will learn how to game it just to get the badge. And in many cases, the badges will actually have tremendous currency because it's recognized that it comes from a credible organization with credible meta tagging, as it were, to confirm it. And I think there'll be a whole new industry around this, actually, and I think there'll be lots of interesting movement. But, in the meantime, like I said, it's the wild woolly west, and people will be we'll see all sorts of things happening, I mean, the Coursera business model is to have people pay them so that they can confirm that it really was you who had the experience and it really was you who learned something significant. And in its ideal form, a badge is not just I spent time, but a badge is a badge of accomplishment and with evidence that attaches to it. And so I think over time all of this will get more sophisticated. And but it's we're in the divergent mode right now, and the industry isn't anywhere close to converging on what the answer is to that question. So put on your seatbelt. Let's have a great ride and see where it goes.
I wonder if Kendra would be willing to take the mic. Kendra, if I asked you to take the microphone, could you explain your comment there about concern about the number of systems?
I share your concern, Kendra, reading your note there about things getting watered down and all sorts of different platforms. I mean, this is part of what happens when a new idea. This is kind of the classic innovation cycle, right? I think we're in the hype cycle, and we haven't gotten over the hump to the, the valley of despair before it all makes sense, So that's it.
There was recently a MOOC about badges that I was able to attend because the school where I work was interested in figuring out how to maybe put into place a system. And there's so many different organizations now trying to figure out how to make this work for their system, but they don't seem to all be going through like a centralized hub such as Mozilla. So I'm just really hopeful that that centralized hub happens. I'm just not sure yet.
So I don't know that the answer is a centralized hub, but I certainly believe that the answer needs to include a standard that everyone abides by, like the Mozilla Open Badge Standard. Then you can have a variety of hubs that add other value to your portfolio. So you could have people who add an additional, you could pay someone to proctor or review or comment or score or rate your portfolio so that your portfolio stands out differently than other folks. So like I said, there's a whole other industry going to happen around this. But I don't think all the badges need to come from one body. In fact, I think if it does, the whole idea breaks. So, it becomes like, well, I don't know, I won't. It'll become more traditional instantly, and the power of the innovation will evaporate. So I think if we're open-minded about it but insist on the quality of it, I think we can get there with a distributed model. So let's switch over to Yovel here and give him a chance. So Yovel, this is your chance to kind of drill down on something you're really thinking about. Of course, it can be the content of your book, or it can be something else that you are really anxious to talk about. Is there something you'd want to share with us? Oh, and I turned your mic off again. You got to turn it back on.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you. Well, one thing, I was in this education excellence from the Governor Jeb Bush Alliance for Excellence in Education in Boston, and there was a bunch of reformers and legislators from all over the country, and a lot of big important people that have a lot of weight in education. And one thing that I came back from from this event and just strengthening my belief is that. And I wonder actually what Jim would think about it as a technologist and as an educator and as a representative of one of the big gorillas in technology. It's really that one of the challenges that I see in education right now is the best way to put it is the purposeful use of technology. Harnessing the power of technology to serve the pedagogy rather than technology serving itself and getting because just from the question we've heard from the Kendra, right? Like it's become they need to worry about the variety of different providers of badges, and badges are in my perspective are much higher on the stack when you think about what a school or what you need to have content. You have the ability for teachers to know how to access email or use, a Moodle-like or a virtual learning environment, an LMS, and, or guide their kids through that. So, badges are great, and I'm very excited with the potential, etc. But these worries of compatibility and standards and how do we purposefully use technology to get achievement or to get people to comprehend. And I feel that is not a conversation we have enough, and I think that it's not one that is understood by the educators, because if you look at the structure of a district, and I'll let Jim kind of comment, but you have dozens and dozens of educators and teachers and administrators, but then you have 1.5 technologists that are supposed to worry about the the network and the website and the web space and the virtual learning environment and the servers and the backup. There's so many things, and when we're thinking about the revolution that is happening right now, it's a technologically led revolution, and I think we have a gap there that until we address, it'll be very hard to see the positive results of technology.
So I'm going to.
I've got. Can I jump in here, Steve? I have a construct that might be helpful here, because you're dead on, Yovel, about the pedagogy he needs to lead. And to avoid the shiny new object syndrome, let me describe a framework that I learned from a colleague at Stanford, Dan Gilbert. He stayed, after we finished our graduate program, he stayed behind to work with faculty in the Stanford Wallenberg Hall, which is high-tech classrooms with all sorts of technology in them. And he was helping faculty come in and make use of them. And what he found was faculty would walk into these classrooms and they would just like glaze over, with all this stuff, So he finally had to say, look, just time out for a minute. You're an educator. You're a teacher. The first order of business is to figure out the verbs that you want going on in this room. What do you as a teacher want to be doing? What do you want your students to be doing? So start with the verbs. And then he said, then the nouns will make sense. You can select which nouns you want to support the verbs that you want to have happen. And when you think of it that way, it all starts to make more sense, But again, if you start with the nouns, oh, look at this shiny new object. Let's try it out and see what happens. You often get to the wrong answer, or you get disappointed, or worse, you have massive examples of a waste of money and time. So start with the verbs, then go to the nouns, and you'll be in good shape.
So I love that response, Yovel. I'm cribbing from Kevin Kelly, who talks about the Amish and the way in which they evaluate technologies and then determine their impact on the community and their goals, and then determine whether or not and how to bring that technology into their community. Of course, it's a religious structure, and so it's a very different decision-making process. But is there a degree to which the heavy politicization or political influence in education in the U.S. stops us sometimes, do you think, from being able to look deeply at the impact of technology and how to bring it in?
There is a lot of politics here, I think, definitely from a state perspective, control of data, systems that do student information system, etc. But I don't know if it's really this politics is the problem. In many ways, I feel that it's a lot more to do with tactical technology decisions. So there's a budget for this year, and the budget is to cover tablets, so we buy iPads or we buy Chromebooks or we buy whatever, and we figure out how it works with everything else we have later on. Or we make a committee that chooses a virtual learning environment or a learning management system where it doesn't really fit with necessarily the whole infrastructure. So I think it's a combination. I think politically we need to have the climate for innovation. The system should, the powers that be, the legislators and the leaders in the district should, worry about climate control for innovation and technology usage. And then I think we need to focus on, the innovative usage of technology in the field that actually serve the pedagogy. So, in some of our calls with some of the schools that we work with, we come to them and say, okay, what is it that you want to do? Like Jim would say, what are the verbs that you're about to use or want to implement? And let's figure out how technology can help. I'll give you one good example from the last week, which kind of blew my mind in terms of the potential. So one of our partners came and said, you know what, we have a big problem with hiring. Where it's a charter school that opens a new school and they have to hire 30, 40, 50 teachers in one time. Technology is an amazing tool to streamline that process. And that is really the type of innovation that I think needs to happen. So from the moment that they had the need to the moment that they had something they could play with, it took about 10 days. And it's interesting. So for me, that is what's missing, the more strategic view of technology usage rather than tactical. My budget is for this year, and how do I spend it, or how do I get to somewhere that is giving me tactical results, not strategic results.
And to be sure that technology has many roles in a school system. It's part of it's about learning, part of it's about teaching, part of it's about efficiency and running the organization. And all of these things have different needs, and But again, if you know the verbs, you'll figure out the nouns. And by the way, great teaching verbs persist. The nouns may go obsolete, and you may have a better, a better wheel for the school bus, as it were. But great teaching and what we know about learning isn't going to change. We might get smarter about it, but it's not nearly the same rate of change as the technology itself.
I'm so glad it's the two of you on here, and Jim, I'm so glad to. I know I'm not alone because Lucy said it before she left. Man, I'm taking notes because I think the content here is so valuable. I am going to kick myself tomorrow for giving you in any way the impression that I was criticizing HP when I was. It was not my intention at all. I feel like the whole sort of industry has shifted, and I'm gonna be mad at myself forever about that. Jim, let's talk about professional development, because you just made a note in the chat. PD needs to be reimagined so teachers don't experience it as something they do to us. You're spending a lot of time thinking about PD. You were a significant part of the peer-to-peer kind of learning in the STEMX conference. What are you thinking about, and what are you feeling like are really important things that we should be focusing on?
Well, I think we really have to think about the life and the work life of a teacher, and find new ways to support what they're trying to do. We ask a lot of teachers, and we need to, maybe there's certain kinds of professional development that's just compliance oriented. And I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about how do we, look at the Common Core or Next Generation Science Standards in the U.S. These things come down, and then how do we help teachers do that? It's new. And then how do we encourage innovation in classrooms and stuff? How do we help teachers fill in the gap of their own knowledge? We have many science teachers assigned in low-income schools in the U.S. where they're not, they don't have the credentialing that goes with their assignment. Not to their own fault, it's just how it's worked out, you know. So now, how do we fill in those gaps? So I think we need to be more teacher-centric about it. One of the things that led us to is the idea that if it's bite-sized, then maybe a busy teacher might actually have time to do it. You know, I teach for Montana State. It's a compressed 6-week semester for a 1-unit master's course, and it takes 10 hours a week for somebody to take my course. Well, that's a big hurdle for a lot of busy teachers. So this is why with Catalyst Academy we call them mini courses, and we aim for roughly 6 to 12 hours spread out over 3 to 4 weeks. So it's things that you can do in your spare time. You know, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and you can fit it in. And it's something you've selected because you've gone through the catalogs that I want to learn that, and it's practical, and it helps you go from, ooh, what's that, to, hey, I tried it and it works, you know. So these are the rethinking the bite size of it, rethinking the availability of it, so it's not just a workshop in the summer, but it's there whenever you want it, and then rethinking what the interactions look like. So it isn't, you know, simply, you know, information on a web page. So those are some of the things we're thinking about. But I'd love to join other people who are helping to reimagine what we used to call professional development. And I think we ought to collaborate, and we'll make faster progress if we work together.
So I'm hearing a couple of things there, one of which maybe wasn't stated, but that you and I have talked about before, which is that when teachers are teaching other teachers, they're very much in a proactive, constructivist role. The other thing I'm wondering is if you talk about that kind of choice for small, bite-sized opportunities for learning, seems like the badging actually really matches up with that in terms of aggregating that kind of bottom-up choice into a level of competency or an ability to assess a certain amount of time or value as a part of that professional development without necessarily requiring that it be completely dictated from up above. Is that actually sort of a stated purpose of the badging? Is that ability to aggregate the individual choices?
That's part of what's driving us to use badging. Is Larry Johnson from the New Media Consortium calls it microcredits. You know, so can you collect that microcredits from a variety of experiences from a variety of institutions and add them together and have something to show for it? You know, and actually get some professional recognition for all those little bits and pieces. So yeah, that's part of why we're using badging. The other is because these experiences come from a variety of institutions, and the only thing that's common among them is that you earn a HP Catalyst Academy badge from it. So again, it's a way to glue things together, and so not having to rely on all the great mini courses coming from one central hub of PD land. You know, because there's great PD from lots of sources, and but what doesn't exist is a way to piece all this together.
That's a lovely place
I'd like to add a couple.
Go ahead, Yovel.
No, well, my comment is you know, we've been active in professional development of teachers for many years now, and I concur with Jim's, you know, perspective. I actually feel that, you know, we are in the month of the Connected Educator Month. In my mind, educators should be connected around year-round. They need to be connected, period. Not just in the Educator Month, but in general, they need to have access to Twitter became a great PD area, you know, like a great place to get professional development. Badges are getting those bite-sized. But at the same time, you got to have a structure that would disseminate information like Common Core or you know, evaluation frameworks like the Danielson or I don't know others that are out there. And you need to take. I think the districts need to take this challenge a lot more seriously in a way that to kind of implement what I call sustained PD. Which is not just the workshops or the, you know, like the kind of drive-by professional development, but really something that would be personalized for the teacher. In a perfect world for me, teachers, the PD for teachers will be about them and about their needs, and basically kind of be the support system that they need. So they could be kind of like this orchestra, this conductor on this orchestra of, I need a little bit of teacher leadership, and then I need some Common Core, and I need maybe some support to help my student with reading because they're 2 years behind and I can't deal with this. So the PD needs to go into a different layer, a different step, which will be how do we make all our teachers a lot more effective? And the best way to do that is by providing them access to quality technology, quality content, and good training and mentorship that would actually transform what they're doing and help them be more effective.
So let's close there, only because my commitment to both of you was to an hour, and as a courtesy, we try and finish on time. Jim, Yovel, thank you so much. Loved hearing from both of you. That was really a lot of fun and some great notes. And again, I'm beginning to shift my perception on badges. We'll see how that goes. Have a great night to both of you. Thanks to those of you who are here. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Yovel.